Welcome back to our little podcast where we talk about the occult, the supernatural, and cunning small friends who mean more to the world than one could ever imagine. Animals are something special to many of us. The amount of friends I know that have told me that they would risk their lives for their pet, and even more so than a friend, is quite outstanding. I know many of us can view our animals and kind of see that glint in their eye, that realization that they're smarter than just a house cat or just a dog or a rat or a ferret or whatever your taste is. And a lot of us connect with them in a way that can feel spiritual, sometimes even magical. Which really brings us to today's topic, which is familiars.
A familiar is such a creature, an animal or bird that sees inside to the very soul of its human companion and knows what others might not, what fears they might be, and what joys, for it shares the emotions of its human's partner. Alice Hoffman, Magic Lessons.
I think the best place to start for today is really just defining and breaking down what a familiar is. Vanessa, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if you haven't noticed already, the season of the witch has made a new renaissance. With IG, Pinterest, and now TikTok dominating the social media sphere, our rock-loving, tea-drinking society, if you will, you'd have to say it's easy to see that we are no longer hiding our truest self. And with that exposure comes the exposure of a furry, scaly, slimy, and most importantly, cute as fuck friends. And a lot of the times, in contemporary terms, those would be seen as familiars, you know? Like, I think Hachi's your familiar. I feel like Rady is definitely Casey's familiar, but that's my homeboy too. Me and him have bonded. He's been there when I had to worship the porcelain throne.
Yeah. No, and I definitely have to say, and later in the podcast I want to break down what sort of divides and defines a familiar on a magical level, but Haji's kind of an interesting one.
Yeah.
And
I'm just thinking of how goofy he is.
He's definitely one that I didn't want him. I did not want him when I went to the shelter. I was with my partner at the time, and I said, I do not have the mental fortitude to take care of a husky. I didn't choose him. He chose me. And he made sure that he came home. And I like to think he's pretty happy because, goddamn, I never thought I would be in a position where anybody begged me for this much fucking attention, and I actually liked it. But that being said, I've had experiences. Vanessa knows this because I remember calling her slightly panicked on my road trip up to Oregon, right before she called me slightly panicked, and there was some freaky shit going on in my house because it was a weird time of my life, and that house is really creepy, and Hachi played an important role in both my mental health and I think a little bit more in getting past that time, which and I think that plays a huge part of it, is when it comes to familiars, they have a certain, I don't know if the word essence is what I want to call it, but I do think that feeling of protection, that feeling of the bonds that you make with them, and that need to stand at the door, to sit at the door, to be there for both, I think in a way, both your emotional protection is the same thing as your spiritual protection.
When I had Charlie, she would always come to me when I was feeling sad. Anytime she heard me crying, she would come to me. I had her when we were living in the apartment on Cinnabar, but then I also had her at the RV, and it was really hard to keep her contained in the RV, so I reluctantly let her out because she started bonding with this little black cat, and it would just be so cute because she'd try to get the cat to come inside the RV and feed it, and she would just run back in and out and be like, come in. The day that she died, I knew something was wrong because I couldn't find her and she didn't come back, and I was sad, and I was sad that day anyways, and I was like, where is she? And then I found her underneath somebody's tire, and the visceral reaction I had, like, I just remember letting out like a blood curdling scream, and then I managed to get her out of the underneath the car, and I grabbed a knife, my pocket knife at the time. So I always got a knife on me, and I just stabbed. Like, I stabbed the tire really hard, and I think I broke the tip of my knife on the rim, and I don't regret it. But it was like something that I knew with all through my body that something was wrong because of the bond that we had, and that was an otherworldly bond.
It's those kind of bonds, and it's for a lot of people, and well, for a lot of animals too. It's that mutual thing. It's the same reason I named my dog Hachi, which is short for Hachiko. If anyone isn't familiar with the story, it's a true legend in Japan about he was the 8th of his litter, and 8 means Hachi, and Ko meaning, something little or small. So it was either little or small, or it means like a little king or princess. I want to say Ko is supposed to mean like small, endearing. I could be wrong on that. I'm not a linguist by any means. And it was a good dog. The dog would walk with his owner to the train station every day, and it would wait for him at the train station until he came home, and would walk home with him. And this happened for quite a while, till the man began to get sick in his older age, and he went to go to hospital appointments. And unfortunately, one day, the dog went to the train station, and the man never came home. And the locals would shoot away, tell it to go home. I don't remember if there was a family at home or what the case was, but for the rest of that dog's life, every day it would come back to the train station waiting for his owner.
And now I just think of Futurama, and now I'm gonna cry.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was based on too.
I'm pretty sure. Futurama has a way of like being hilarious and just making me cry.
Yeah, and that's why I named my dog Hachiko, not because I wanted a sad ending for him, but I wanted someone in my life that really had that level of bond and loyalty. And someone that I can be as loyal to Hachi as Hachi is to me. Which I really got that. I think that's probably something that can be meant with the fact that I always feel like people always say that words can't hurt you, but people need to also acknowledge the fact that names have power. And more so, the names that you defined for yourself in your life have incredible power.
We will definitely get into that in a later episode. Going back to familiars, let's go into some more of the backstory about it. So, familiar, also known as familiar spirits, comes from the medieval European folklore. They were thought to be spirits that assisted witches and can transform into animals. In the 17th century, small demons known as imps became associated as familiars, because in those times only malevolent beings would serve a witch. But if you were known as a cunning folk or a folk healer, you might also call them curanderos if you're from Latina traditions. Then familiar wasn't an imp, but more of a benevolent supernatural being, or some people might call a good fairy, quote unquote. I thought the imp correlation was fascinating because of what imps are. And we kind of covered them a little bit in our Demoness episode, right? That was a good episode.
We covered a lot of things in that episode, and we always reference it too.
I know. Need to get to see. But familiars are closely linked to their person. Legend has it that they would do things for them, such as gather ingredients, intel, and at times even carry out dastardly missions for their owners. So basically, it's as if your pet had human-like cognitive abilities as well as supernatural. But they weren't just animals. In Western Europe mythology, familiars often manifested themselves as humans or human-like, or had the ability to transfer between the image of a human and then their animal state.
Yeah. And honestly, familiars, they're very classically associated with, the person that usually comes to mind is a cat or a black cat, but that is not the requirement. Familiars can be things like bats, snakes, birds like ravens or crows, sometimes owls, even bugs or insects, rats or mice. Though honestly, I do think that certain animals have different emotional intelligence and intellect, I think that there's not really any standardized testing for what can be a familiar.
Unless you're going to say telekinesis, and I was going to say telekinephews.
I am suddenly thinking, would it be like to have telekinesis with my dog? And I'm simultaneously excited and terrified.
Feed me, bitch.
Oh, he's the definite. My dog is the absolute definition of solving a Rubik's Cube blindfolded to just try to eat it after you're done. Like, I don't know how someone could be so smart but so dumb, but to be honest, I've also known engineers for tech companies, and they're kind of the same.
Yes, this is true. Sir, you need to swipe your card. It's not working because you're not swiping your card properly. Didn't you build the technology, the software for this? Like,
given that we're talking about the origins and some of the European folklore behind what a familiar is, I do want to take a moment and kind of discuss that. Like you said, the common narrative in European folklore depicts familiars as imps or these fiendish creatures provided by, I guess, what you can call like the pits of hell to assist their assigned witch in their unholy business. This portrayal of witches as Satan wicked lovers who would punish the good and taint the lost was quite common around that time. I feel like this common understanding that people had, it has roots to the early Romanized Catholicism, and it spread throughout Europe. It was honestly quite regular that common pagan practices and worship of what were often regarded as peaceful deities and the traditions that follow were adapted straight into Catholicism. Gods that were regarded as honorable spirits of nature or what have you were translated as demons that were supposed to serve in Hell's armies. These bastardizations also have taken place in multiple traditions, such as Hallows Eve and Winter Solstice, which is now turned into Halloween and, funny enough, Christmas. This misunderstanding of what a familiar is and how they work could have originally been misconstrued from that, or potentially the concept of an imp as well. There were a lot of pagan ideals that were unfortunately completely mutilated for the sake of being adapted and kind of being called out as being either false idols or false gods.
As you're talking about this, it reminds me of what they did in the casta system and the territories that Spain colonized in Turtle Island. So having a bond with animals, having this close proximity with earth and all these things that are very pagan-like, if you will, or which are indicative in pretty much every other religion except for like Christianity, besides the dove, they tie you with the earth, the ground, and the whole thing with the Catholics was to separate from these earth-like things. And what they would do is, in the casta system, European people were seen to be more of this closer to God because they were further away from Earth, which made no sense to me because isn't quote-unquote he supposed to be the creator of these things? So why would it be separate? Since black and brown culture typically was something more, their religions tied us to the earth. We were closer to the earth, we were closer to nature. We were seen to be more evil and malevolent because of that relationship with the earth. And so that's one of the things they use to separate us.
Kind of feels like one of which was supposed to be that you were supposed to be viewed as understanding, appreciating, and becoming one with what surrounds you, and the other focus on the idea of ascending past it.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of people who want to save the earth versus people who want to colonize Mars.
Oh, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Completely different argument, but on the topic of colonization and its bastardized children, such as cultural
completely different argument,
and being that this topic is about familiars, the one thing that comes up in researching for this episode, because of the spirit quality to this, because familiars are known as spirits that transform into animals, thus the term spirit animal comes up. And let's just be clear on this: stop saying spirit animal. For the love of fucking God, just don't do it. It's wildly inappropriate. Also, don't ask anyone of indigenous descent what their spirit animals are. Okay? In a 2017 article written by Danya Coles, they wrote a piece called Not Your Spirit Animal, Cultural Appropriation, Misinformation, and the Internet. Doña lays out the issue very well by stating, like most things on the internet, however, this is not only wrong, but extremely offensive. The cultural appropriation way that the term spirit animal is used in everyday speech is extremely harmful and so casual that most people don't even think twice about it. And she further says, the problem is that the continued use of this phrase is part of the cultural appropriation of indigenous culture that seeks to commodify and erase the realities of indigenous people. And that's pretty much it.
As an additional note on what otherwise is a very serious argument that I 100% agree on, can I just say that to all of the macho white men that I know out there whose spirit animal is a gray or a white wolf, you are not original. You are so not original.
I don't know why, but I'm thinking of Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Rock, flag, and eagle. That was impromptu. Shout out to Charlie Day.
Sorry, I just wanted to make mention about... Oh my goodness.
I think it's only natural for humans to bond with animals in another worldly level. We've evolved side by side. We technically are animals, you know, and a bunch of hairless monkeys with freaking anxiety.
But I do think that's a good point, that I think one of the reasons why we do connect so well with animals, in addition to the fact that we're such a social species, it kind of is us connecting with something that is in our roots and us trying to hold together on that connection that we have to nature, which, I mean, let's be honest, animals are typically better at being connected to nature than we are.
I was watching Primal. I was like, bruh, we got nothing on our ancestors, not a damn thing. Because I was like, if we were to actually live back, if we were to like teleport and time travel back then, we'd die. I know Casey ain't dealing with it. It's not. Like, if we were to be in like prehistoric times, like we wouldn't survive as humans now. Like, it'd be so different for us. Okay, Bear Grylls, she's gonna drink her own pee.
I don't know, I've been watching a lot of YouTube and like
I know how to make fires. But there's so many comforts that we take for granted now. Not just comforts, but small things. You would definitely need to know the recipe for making aspirin. Aspirin and penicillin are key in like our evolution, because like a lot of people just died off of like fever alone.
I mean, and when you think about it, the discovery and the reproduction of penicillin isn't that old of a thing that we've stumbled across.
No, but the mortality rate, we've definitely been able to keep more people alive because of that. But aspirin was a simple game changer because so many people died off of fever alone. And that's one of the things that you do if you have a fever. It's like take aspirin. So it's like simple things like that. But also too, like most people aren't physically as fit as their ancestors, not even like 100 years ago.
Think how much the discovery and invention of optical curved lenses has done for us. Think of the amount of people with imperfect vision that are able to be just as useful in society as anyone with 20/20 vision.
Yeah, so we've gotten definitely off of familiars.
No, yeah, we have.
So that being said, you know, I think it's very indicative of humans to be bonded with animals for many reasons, especially being the social creatures as we are, as you said. I mean, that's why when the most iconic part of I Am Legend is that the part where he has to kill the dog. We felt that. You feel that. You felt that the whole audience. That's like when people are like in horror movies, it's always that they feel a reaction when the pets die.
That's why I covered my eyes halfway through Babadook, because like I kept seeing the dog and I was like, no, leave the fucking dog alone.
Or how we cheer for like, you know, like Homeward Bound. We really felt that movie, you know?
But I think it's needless to say, as we wrap up in today's episode, I think all of you with pets or familiars, however you wish to call them at home, take a moment to go give them some love, go give them some attention, and maybe go give them a treat. I don't know. They're good to us, and we should be good to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to take a moment to thank a couple of our Patreon subscribers. You keep us going and you make our lives a lot easier. We really appreciate it, and because of you, we're able to really keep trying to up our quality and make sure we can do the best that we can. Thank you to Ben Turco, and thank you to Ruta Pillar. You guys are absolutely amazing.